folks. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being here with us. Look, you guys have been watching the news. Crime rate is going through the roof in Houston. That's what you hear on TV. And you know what? We have some wonderful judges that got elected in 2018. And somehow in 2022, they're telling you these guys have been letting out people on bail. They have been filling the streets up with criminals. Criminals been going back out there and killing and killing and killing. That is the story that you have been told. That is a story a derelict media has allowed to grow. That is something that we have to put a stop to. What do we do here at KPFT? We bring you the true story. I am honored today. To have Juanita Jackson. Juanita Jackson is a lawyer, but she's also running for Judge Harris County Criminal Court 10 judge. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Juanita. How are you doing today?
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity for me to set the record straight for my colleagues and for the citizens of Harris County to really know what's going on.
Yeah, I think he wants you a little closer to the mic.
A little closer to the mic.
Now, let me tell you, Juanita, let me first tell our audience how I came about, how I found you.
Yes.
I watch all social media because that if we want to know why people think the way they think, why they do what they do, we have to make sure that we are in the sphere where everybody is.
Right.
TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. So I scan those continuously. And who pops up on my screen? Juanita Jackson.
Me.
And Juanita Jackson has this great TikTok that explained in detail the entire bail bond issue and the issue about people getting released on bond and somehow committing crimes. And somehow these great judges that we have here in Harris County, they're responsible for the problem. And that's the narrative that's been out there.
That's the false narrative, because the bottom line is that we have to understand that they're trying to distract people and they're fear mongering, and they are creating a situation around the entire country.
Right.
And needed to find someone to blame. And the easy thing is to do when you're trying to usher one party out is to blame that party.
Exactly.
The fact is that, yes, in 2019, 2021, crime was up. Crime was up the entire country.
Right.
Crime was up everywhere, even small town USA,
right,
because of the pandemic. It's not any one particular's fault. It was up. We've got to deal with that. But the reality is we have good judges that have been in place, brought in 2018, that have worked really hard. And we finally got a handle on crime, and crime is on the way down.
Exactly. But if you watch the news, you don't see it. So before we get into that, I want to remind everybody that this is a call-in show. If you have some questions for Juanita, give us a call at 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. And let's dispel I'll just outright say it. Let's dispel the lies that's permeating the entire Harris County, and these judges that have actually been doing very good work. Harris County is a county of over 4 million people. Okay.
Exactly.
And I don't want to diminish those who've been affected by crime. Crime is bad. They've been affected by it. But let's get the numbers right, and let's appropriately address the issues. Juanita, how I want to start this is I want to ask you, first of all, what is a bail bond? What is it?
So a bail bond is designed in our law. We are one of the few countries, there are only two countries in the civilized world that still does a cash bond system. And our law says that if you're accused of a crime and you are innocent until proven guilty, to assure your appearance, to come to court, to go through the process of your trial, in exchange, you can leave a certain amount of money to the court registry in exchange, and your promise to appear.
Right.
Now, there are bail bond companies that take a percentage of that, or that you can pay them a percentage instead of the full amount, because most people don't have the full amount.
Right.
And the bail bond companies, that is their fee. And they will put up the They will put up the collateral or the money for you for that bond. And that mainly just means, and you're telling the court that I will show up to court.
So in other words, the judge assigns a certain bond that you have to meet to get out of jail. You can't cover that. So you give some sort of a collateral or whatever to a bondsman or bondsperson. That bond person pays the entire bill to the state for...
Well, technically, they don't pay the entire bill.
Oh.
They have credit. They have gone through a step and they don't pay the bill. They're just putting up their word that if something happens, they will
pay that the amount of if that person skips town or something, they'll put up that money. The bail bond does that. Now, one other question though. When you pay your bail bond for that address, do they keep that 10% or whatever?
Yes, that is their fee.
And you never get that back.
Right. And they're never really put up money and give money to the county.
So it's just
the only time they have to give up money to the county is in the rare situations, and they're very rare, where someone never comes back to court.
Right.
And they don't come back to court and they're never arrested.
So that really favors already if you have a cash bond system, that favors one who has money. And the reality is one who has money does not determine criminality or not.
Exactly. That's the whole point. And part of what's happening and why the media is getting it all confused is people have mistaken bail reform. We use that term bail reform. Right. Many states, and I don't know the number off the top of my head in the last 5 years, have done away with cash bail systems. Right. There's states, New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles, that don't have it at all.
Right.
We were a little late in the game. So what people need to understand in this whole thing with bail reform, in 2019, a federal court ruled that Harris County misdemeanor bail bond system was unconstitutional, was illegal. The federal courts said, you've got to stop doing this. You've got to, as a county, stop making poor people have to put up money. There are so many cases. I've been doing this 24 years. I've been a criminal defense attorney, and I can tell you terrible stories of poor people being charged with minor offenses that just didn't have $250.
Right.
And they either sat in jail if they were steadfast and they were determined that I'm not guilty, and they'd have to sit in jail. They'd lose their job. I had clients that had lost their children to CPS because they couldn't make money. That's part of the lawsuit, was a woman that spearheaded or was the face of the lawsuit, was a single mom charged with driving with license invalid and just didn't have the poor $250. And she risked losing her children and losing her job. So that's the basis of bail reform, that it does not determine whether you're going to commit another offense or whether you have the money. Being poor should not make you have to sit in jail.
Now, now that you have that laid out, what exactly was this change in bail bond that after the Supreme Court told you that it was unconstitutional? What changes were made that all these folks are complaining about right now? So
that's the problem, is people are blurring the lines.
And what's the blur?
The blur is the bail reform applied to misdemeanor cases. The O'Donnell case specifically for federal court said for nonviolent misdemeanors, you cannot hold someone based on a cash system. So we no longer require, if you got arrested for driving with license or invalid, or your 17-year-old got arrested for shoplifting, we no longer require you to put up money. So they do get what they call personal bonds, but there is a method to it. You are determined to look at risk to the public, risk to the possibility of not. So these things were already in our laws. Let me get this correct for you to understand. We already had laws in place, but prior to that, 2018, the judges weren't following the law.
They were just locking people up.
They were not getting bail hearings. Our law requires you to set bail based on a person's likelihood to come to court and their ability to pay and public safety.
And that was Texas law, correct?
It has always been Texas law
Now,
as far as I've been practicing 24 years.
So if we're talking, if we vigilant, yeah, I got it. If we are talking that this is Texas law, who writes Texas law again?
The legislature, which is mostly Republican held. So this law has been in place. The difference was judges were not following the law. That resulted in the lawsuit. So now where things get blurred is that the other side is now saying, oh, we've got Democrat judges and they're letting all these people out. Well, the Democrat judges are following
the law. After having been sued for not following the law. And therefore, if any law needed to be changed, or if any blame needed to be applied to whatever it is our judges are doing in Harris County, that belongs to the legislature to make that change. Right. So, folks, go ahead. Emily.
So the difference is, and where people are getting blurred, is that the law and the changes affected misdemeanors. And there are so many studies out there now that have said that this misdemeanor bail reform is working. Lower recidivism for misdemeanor cases. People are showing up to court. They have a higher percentage of cases getting resolved. The misdemeanor bail reform is working.
Perfect. It worked.
It is working in its design. But where people are getting confused is on felony bail. There is no felony bail reform. Felonies, you still got to put up money. You still got to make collateral. You still have to go through a process. Now, what I will tell you is prior to, again, just in the misdemeanors and the felonies, the law was not being followed by the previous judges that required a true bail hearing. So now judges are having bail hearings. And also there are what people get, oh, they just let this person out. It was charged with murder. Well, let me make it very clear to all the listeners. Texas law says that everyone is entitled to a bail except in very few situations. The one situation is capital murder, not entitled to, but they're entitled to a hearing.
Right.
Okay. And two, any other murder or violent offense. They have to have a hearing. Okay. And in the hearing, there's specific rules that have to be followed. And I'm telling you, I've practiced 24 years and I knew those rules, and I knew in Harris County they were never followed. Never followed. And now we have judges that, because of lawsuits, et cetera, are requiring the state to follow them, requiring the district attorney. Because, for example, one thing that people don't know is if you are out on bond for any felony, say you're evading in a motor vehicle, and you now get picked up and you're charged later with a possession of controlled substance case. Well, the law says that you are still entitled to a bond, even on your new case. But the state, if they want to hold you at no bond, they have to do several things. They have to file a motion within 7 days. 7 days.
The law. Yes.
And after that, they have to set it for a hearing, and you're entitled to a hearing. And the hearing in the law says the state must present substantial evidence of your guilt for the new offense.
So if you're out on bail, you commit another crime, you also get to go into a judge's office for a hearing so that you can determine if another bail will apply to this new offense.
Right.
State law. Written by?
The legislature.
All right. The reason I'm bringing this up, because that is one concept that a lot of the news media would use as well. Hey, this person was already out on bail. They came back in and they got out on bail again. You're following what again?
The law.
State law. Again, so this is what drives me crazy with our media. And this is why we are here. Here is a lawyer explaining to us that these judges are simply doing what they were tasked to do, follow the law written in Austin, Texas. If there's anyone to be blamed for how the system functions, turn your eyes onto Austin, Texas. And given that we are in the voting time right now, it seems to me like if you don't like what you're seeing, you need to vote the people who are writing the laws out of office.
Right. Or just bottom line. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not, but people need to understand it's a bigger issue. It's not just, oh, this judge let this guy out. Well, let me advise you. People have always been let out.
Right.
Let's be honest. You're sitting here and you see these ads that, oh, my loved one was murdered by someone that was out on bond for aggravated assault and now they've committed. And you know what? I feel for you. And it has happened. And it is sad when things like this happen. But the fact is it's always happened.
Right.
I could sit here for every single time that, and I'm not going to name his name, a media person he's actually targeted 5 or 6 felony judges and claiming all of these outrageous things. Well, there are 5 or 6 Republican judges that have done the exact same thing before 2018.
Well, I'm actually going to name names because one is a son of the lieutenant governor, current lieutenant governor, and this current lieutenant governor is running, and he's running on crime, and he's running on these issues as well. When his son, who was a judge,
yes, Judge Ryan
I tell you
Patrick.
What, explain that issue. I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
but it's just this is what, and I'm not saying what, and I just need to point out it's happened. Even someone as learned as Ryan Patrick, he had a situation where he had a defendant in his court, was charged with a serious felony, gave him a bond, came before him, was charged with another murder,
right,
and he was let out on bond.
Right.
Because the law
had to. Because
ultimately, if the state cannot present enough evidence that shows that you're substantially guilty of the second, you're entitled to a bond. So let's make that clear. It's happened. We can give a long list of Republican judges. As I said in my TikTok, and what spearheaded it is that even former Republican judges are sitting here looking at these ads and they're upset by it because they know that they are mischaracterizing the law. And that, as one Republican judge said to me, judges don't have crystal balls. All we can do is follow the law. And if the law is not adhered to by either the district attorney, because and I'm not throwing anybody under a bus, but when we were all bombarded with so many cases due to COVID, the district attorney was losing DAs left and right. And things like motions, getting them filed within 7 days, having a hearing within a certain amount of time, they weren't happening. And the judge had no choice but to follow law and set a bond. But let me point this out. Bonds are higher now than they were 8 years ago. Before 2018, Republican judges had what they called a bail schedule. It's the craziest thing I'm going to tell you. Our law says that you're supposed to have a bail hearing. They weren't doing it. A bail hearing, really, you came in and people can get online and look at these, quote, old bail hearings that took 30 seconds. A defendant would stand before a magistrate. They'd say, you're charged this. They'd look at a sheet of paper and they'd say, oh, you're charged with this. They came up with this formula and they just would set the bail. Had no information about the person's criminal history, about the person's ability to make the bond, about the person's likelihood to commit another offense.
They didn't know the person.
They didn't do anything. It was just we came up with this chart. And if you were charged back then, in 2018, and trust me, if you were charged with murder, you got a $50,000 bond. Boom. They didn't ask you anything. It was just set, no question asked. You got a $50,000 bond. If someone made a good argument for you, maybe you were in custody a little while, you got a good attorney, and maybe they argued that you had no prior history, no anything. Your bond could be as little as $30,000. Now, we're doing real hearings and bonds are being set at $100,000, $200,000. We have people in Harris County Jail, I've never seen it before in my life, that are sitting on $1 million bonds. Was never done 10 years ago.
Nobody tells our public that. Instead, we hear that this slate of judges that came into 2018, somehow they are more lenient with, which isn't the case at all.
No. But the problem is, it's just this perfect storm of circumstances that have led to these situations that people the media has exploded about. You've got these handful of cases, and I'm not denying that there probably in the media talks, I think there's about 6 or 7 cases over the last 4 years that they've been highlighted that people have been out on serious felonies and committed another serious felony. But it's about an issue of not they're entitled to a bond, but then what's happened that these people have made the bond. I used to tell people when I first started it, people couldn't make a $50,000 bond. Whenever there were bonding companies that legally couldn't even, they had a limit as to how many bonds they could write. So if I had a client that was back in the day, I remember this, that when white collar crime was big, when they were doing the mortgage fraud, or if you had a white collar, your bond was, if you were accused of stealing from a company and you stole $400,000, I'm going to use this, the judge standard for your bond was the amount of money you stole.
Wow.
So if you stole $40,000 from your boss, your bond would be $40,000. If you stole $400,000, your bond would be $400,000. Yeah. There weren't bonding companies that could even write those bonds. So you have cases of someone, and it's happened, and we have cases that were accused of white collar crimes, had bonds of $400,000, didn't look at their history or anything, and were sitting in jail because they couldn't make those bonds.
That is pathetic. But I mean, again, earlier I told the audience, and by the way, folks, I forgot to give you the number again, 713-526-5738. If you have some questions on the bond issues, on the crime issues, give us a call, 713-526-5738. Una vez más, 713-526-5738. We're honored to have Juanita Jackson, who is running for Harris County Criminal Court number 10. But she was here mainly to tell us about this issue that many judges are unable to talk about or reluctant to talk about it. So, Juanita, this is one of the questions that I asked you. I said, wait a minute, why is it that all these new judges that came in 2018, to put it bluntly, I've spoken to a few of them. I've spoken to several of them and asked them, why don't you defend yourself? Why don't you get on air? Why don't you come on and say something? And they are all reluctant to speak until I heard what you had to say. What's that?
So the issue is, again, we've got laws that are written. There are laws and ethics that judges must adhere to. And one of the biggest things is that judges cannot make statements on and taking a position on legal issues, and they can't make any statements about any cases that could potentially be in their court or are in their court. So if you accuse a judge, I'm using this as an example because what's going on now, we have another person in the media that is telling outright lies about several judges in cases that are in their court. And our laws say the judges can't comment.
No, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would like to know who to further investigate. So who should I be further investigating on that?
I'll have to tell you off the air because he's a very devious media person, and then I will be a target. Okay. So that's the problem that you have, is that there are people that are unscrupulous in the media out there that know, one, that judges can't speak on these things. So they can lie and they can do everything that they can to disparage these judges' names. And then two, they become very vindictive.
Right.
And there are many of them out there, and they're doing that now. There are even, quote, fake media people that are staging paid protests that are paid by these judges' opponents.
Well, I want to point out something to the audience. And by the way, welcome Paul Fleming and Persuasive Barrier. I want to point out something that's very important, folks. If you have judges right now that are running for this office, to be a judge, and this has nothing to do with Miss Juanita Jackson here. This is Politics Done Right making this statement. No judge that is currently misleading the audience, misleading Harris County citizens by making them believe things are the way they are not, that should immediately disqualify them from being judges, because it means they would be just as deceptive on the bench. And the last thing we want are deceptive judges on the bench. Juanita was not saying this. This is Politics Done Right saying this. If you are voting for any judge putting out those ads that are lying to you, that means they will lie to you in the court as well. RJ, come on in. Let's see what you have to say. RJ, talk to me.
Both any judge putting out
turn it down, RJ. Turn your radio down, and then you can speak. Go ahead.
You on?
Yes, we're on. But RJ, please turn the volume down. Thank you.
Gotcha. Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to know why these judges are letting all these criminals out on all these felony bonds over and over and over again, and people are getting killed.
Okay, before I ask Juanita to answer, I want to ask you, were you listening to the show earlier on, or did you just kind of come on now?
I just now tuned in.
All right, great. I'm so glad because Juanita can explain.
So, RJ, what we talked about earlier and where the misnomer is our law specifically requires everyone in the state of Texas is entitled to a bond. Very few circumstances can a judge have someone at no bond. And one of the ones is capital murder. They can hold them at no bond, but there's still a requirement that must have a hearing. So what you're getting is that they're letting them all out on their free will. They're not. What is happening is our law says that they must give them a bond. So people are getting bonds. Things and circumstances have changed. It's a really complicated situation that now people can financially make the bonds that 10 years ago they couldn't make. I've been doing this 24 years. And it used to be if someone had a $50,000 or $100,000 bond that they couldn't even financially make the money or come up with the money to make the bond. But we've had bonding companies. Now the restrictions or the requirements for money has drastically changed. So people are able to make the bonds now because bonding companies are no longer requiring collateral. They're no longer requiring 4 and 5 people to co-sign. Because it used to be back in the day, someone sat in jail on a $30,000 bond because they didn't have any collateral. They no longer require collateral. They now have bonding companies, bonding loans. Your mama and dad now can go get a loan and cover your bond. That didn't happen 10 years ago. So these things and these circumstances don't have anything to do with the judges. It has to do with the way the law is written. Because for the first time, like I think there's another candidate that ends up saying the problem was people didn't realize until the lawsuit. And RJ, what you didn't hear is people don't understand. Harris County bail bond system in 2019 was declared unconstitutional by a federal judge. A federal judge ruled that judges prior to 2018 were not following the law. So what's happening is judges are following the law. And now the other side is saying they're letting them all out. No, the judges are following our law that says everyone gets a bail bond, and there are certain strict requirements that the district attorney must present and do to hold someone at no bond. They're very, very minimal. So they're just following the law. I'm not saying that it's a bad situation, but it's not the judge's fault. And let me point out, the percentage of people that are getting out on bond and committing new offenses, the percentage has not changed much, considering the population explosion we've had. So this whole idea that our crime is high, crime is high, the entire country. But we as Houston have a very unique situation because we had during COVID a population explosion.
Right.
So that makes crime go up. But what everybody's not reporting is that since 2018, by following the law the way it's supposed to be done, crime is down now. Now, we'll point out that I love that. I've been doing my research. They're saying as much as we're down by 10, 12% now. And even Crime Stoppers has to admit, Crime Stoppers put out their statistics in the last few weeks, and because they were the ones arguing that crime is so bad. So they're now admitting, if you go to their website, but they're not saying it's really down. They're saying, oh, we're at a plateau now.
Right. Of course, that's what they say. But did you understand that, RJ?
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Okay, you don't have to. You don't have to buy it, RJ.
You don't have to buy it.
Let me tell you, RJ.
I'm in the courts every day, and I know the law.
But you know what else, RJ? I tell you what, because right now we have a derelict media. We have a media that lies to you. And when they lie to you, as I said, there's KPFT to tell the truth.
We have a Democrat media.
Say that
You're
again?
right. We have a Democrat-run media.
No. Actually, that's not true. If you take a look at who owns Channel 11, Channel 13, and Channel 2, and Fox News, it is all run by the same conglomerates. When I don't mean the same company per se, but it's actually conservative companies that own all our stations. So that is not.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm not. It's not a question. So you can look it up yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. You can simply look it up. I mean, you can honestly look it up.
Do your research. What I tell everyone is just Google and do your research. RJ, if you're sitting in front of a computer right now, you can Google is crime down in Houston? And there will be article after article telling you that it is. But you're not going to believe it.
Go ahead, RJ. What else do you want to say?
That is so false and fake. I mean, come on. You guys got your head in the sand.
Let me ask you this, RJ, and I'm going to Corey next, but the reason I like to get callers like you in is you are steadfast in the belief of what you've heard on TV, correct?
No, I don't watch TV.
Where have you seen crime, sir?
I turn it off.
Where have you seen crime?
I see it all over the place.
No, I'm saying, have you seen crime yourself? Houston is a humongous place. Where have you seen crime, let's say, in your neighborhood?
Right now, I see all these murders. I see cops. I see catalytic converters getting stolen.
Right.
I see them turned out the door the very next day, $100 fine. Come on.
And what causes that, sir?
What?
What causes this increase in crime? What do you think caused this increase in crime that we're seeing? That we saw? It's on the way down, but
revolving door.
Okay, and now if we're telling you that, what gives the judges the right to release people who come into their offices?
The judges have a say so in it, and like the lady said, the law's on the bond. But hey, you guys have had your chance for 2 years, the last 4 years.
No, but what I'm asking you, RJ, is the laws are written in. I know the laws are written in Austin, right? That these judges have to follow. Do you agree with that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, if the laws are written in Austin that these judges have to follow, these judges got sued for not following the law previous to 2018. In 2018, they started to follow the law. My question again to you, RJ, is who should be responsible then? Shouldn't that go to Austin?
Yes.
Okay, so and who controls Austin, RJ?
The Texas legislature.
And who runs the Texas legislature, Sir RJ?
The legislators. I mean, come on.
Right, and you know who? If Dan Patrick leads the in Texas. Huh? What's that?
You're going off into the weeds.
No, this is not the weeds. We this is what happens. That nobody wants the audience to think critically anymore. Okay, and one of the issues that we do at Politics Done Right is we have enough respect for you to ensure that you will start thinking critically. They want to come on TV and tell you crime rate is up, and they want you to have a gut reaction. And that gut reaction is what's going to cause you to vote the way they want you to do. You come to a Politics Done Right at KPFT. What we're going to do is say, RJ, I don't want you to believe what I'm saying. I believe Juanita, but you don't even have to believe Juanita. You can actually, we're telling you, please, do your research and you'll see where the genesis of the problem really lies. I appreciate you calling, RJ. You keep listening to Politics Done Right. You'll always have a voice here, all right?
There's a good chance for it.
Thank you, RJ.
You have a great day, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Corey. Corey, come on in. Oh, we're going to get the phone working right now with Corey. Corey coming in on number 2. Sorry for that, guys, for hearing that little beep, beep. And by the way, we lost the caller. You guys can call back. Come on in, Corey.
Hey, hello. Thank you for having me on. This is Corey Sapoli. I'm a civil district court judge.
Hey, Corey.
Juanita. Hey, Juanita. How you been?
I'm great. Thanks, Corey.
Well, I'll tell you, Juanita's absolutely right. I had the privilege of having cases against her nearly 20 years ago when I was a prosecutor, and I know she's done a great job. with both on the defense and the prosecution. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and you hit it on the head when you and then that caller RJ called in and said, what's going on? Why are we letting all these people out? Well, it's the messaging from the other side is working, and I know your listeners are in tune to this. But the messaging is working, and the issue is that regardless of who's on the bench, based on the lawsuit and the change of the law in Texas, that whoever's on the bench after this next cycle will have to follow the same law, and the appellate courts are going to make them. So regardless of who's on the bench, the law regarding bonds should be followed. We've had changes, as Juanita pointed out. The bonding industry taking as little as 1%, whereas the minimum used to be 10%. So things have changed. But it underlines the goal of the other side, and that is to have something to stir up their base, get their folks to march to the polls, and to kind of dissuade folks that elected us in 2018 and got us on the bench. I'm a civil judge. I still can't talk about particular cases, but I will say that one of the things that kind of underlies the lack of credibility in the argument that the other side's making about all judges need to go is they stand there and they say crime is bad, get rid of all judges, and that completely ignores the fact that we have courts in Harris County that are specialized. We have criminal courts, civil courts, and probate courts. And the fact that they're marching everybody to the polls to vote all Democrats out based on crime shows the lack of credibility in the underlying argument.
Corey, I want to butt in here because I want to reiterate this message for those people who are just going into the conversation. And I recently met Juanita, and I have to concur. I've learned a whole lot in the limited amount of time that we've spent speaking so far. Very important message. Here is the thing, Corey. You said their message is starting to get out. My thing is that's the reason we're doing this show. That's the reason I hope you called in as well, because there is still time for folks in Harris County to understand the truth, and not only understand the truth, but if you want to blame somebody for the isolated incidents that occur, understand that the laws are written in Austin, Texas, and stop trying to put the blame where it does not belong. And that goes from our district attorney to one of our Democratic state senators who came out and tried to appease the right side with some of the messaging that they have. I'm going directly to you guys and telling you, stop it, because we are actually going to be taking this on very seriously before the election, during the election, and after the election. Thank you, Corey, for calling in. And do you have a short message that you want to say before I have to go to the other caller?
Yes, absolutely. One last thing, that you're absolutely right. People are entitled based on the law constitutionally to bonds. They're not entitled to parole. And look what the governor is doing when he paroles out people that are convicted, and their recidivism rate is going up. And finally, law enforcement, if they're concerned about people on bond, then they can reallocate resources to follow dangerous offenders that have constitutional right to bond. But listen, Juanita, thank you for being up there. Appreciate it very much. Thank you all for taking the call. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
All right, let's go to Jan. I think that's Ian. Let's go to Ian. Come on in, Ian. You're on.
Oh, yes, hello.
Yes, you're on.
Oh, yes, hello. So I have a Volkswagen repair shop in Oak Forest.
Yes.
And last November, I got a guy in a blonde wig on camera prying my front door open at 5:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
My alarm went off. I was able to get there, but there was damage to my front door. The front door had to be replaced. I have caught someone on camera out front of my shop cutting off the catalytic converter to my Econoline. I was able to catch them in the act, watching my cameras again. And in October, just about 2 weeks ago, somebody unscrewed the entire wall to the backside of my shop. It's about 10 feet high. And my motion sensors inside went off. And that was at 1:30 in the morning. I missed the phone call from the alarm company, but the next day I came and I saw the damage at the back of the building. I've tried to... So last November, when the person was prying at my door, me and some of my neighbors hired private security to be there at night. and we tried to get the landlord to get.
Let me ask you this. Ian. Does this have anything to do with bail bonds or somebody coming through, or what?
No, sir. I have a vintage Volkswagen repair shop.
Okay.
I work on Beetles, buses.
Well, look, I am happy that you're working on that, my friend. But right now, I thought you were going to call and ask for an issue with regards to the judge that we have, or the potential judge that we have in the studio right now. But I tell you what, you keep listening to the show and we'll talk another time, okay, on those particular issues. All right? Thank you very much. All right, let's go to Peggy. Come on in, Peggy. All right. Peggy, come on. Oh, you're on, Peggy. Please turn the radio down, my friend.
I just did.
All right.
I called to say hello.
Well, let me see first. Is this Peggy Lopez?
Yes, it is.
Mi hermana favorita. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great.
I don't have anything to say about Texas, but I have a friend who got hauled away to Florida for a crime that occurred 20 years before he got hauled away.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow they decided that he had done the crime.
Mm-hmm.
And he had absolutely the cleanest record of anybody. He was scared to death to even speed. And I don't know if he was scared to death, but he followed all the rules for driving, and he came to California from Florida to work,
mm-hmm.
and met a woman and had a family and was living here. And when they hauled him back to Florida because of this crime that occurred 20 years ago, they set his bail at $3 million
Mm-hmm.
because they said that he was a flight risk because he lived in California and that he had moved to California to escape the crime. Well, he moved to California 10 years after the crime, so it's hard to believe that. But he sat in jail for 3.5 years because of that.
Was he guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
So exactly. That's the whole point. Thank you for calling, Peggy, and pointing that out, that our law has the presumption of innocence, and it should. It was designed that way. And I do understand, and it's hard, that there are times that people do look extremely guilty, but our law says until they are convicted, every judge must consider them innocent. And bonds and bails and things like that should be set accordingly. And Peggy gives a perfect example that in the end, it's not fair. We all talk about, there's some horrific stories.
Mm-hmm.
For every horrific murder or any situation where someone was out on bond and someone was killed, there are just as many, or probably 100 times more, terrible stories about innocent people in jail, even prior to bond.
Mm-hmm.
Without bonds or not being able to make bonds. So that's why we have the reform that's going on. We're trying to figure out and fix it, but there is no easy fix.
Mm-hmm. Now that Peggy, by the way, Peggy is a part of our PDR posse. Peggy, anything else you want to add real quickly before we go to the other call, my friend?
No, I just wanted to say hello.
Well, look, thank you. Thank you for calling in, Peggy, and I'll see you at 3.
Okay.
Take care now.
Bye.
All right, let's go to David. Come on in, David.
Hey, what's up, Big Blue?
Perfecto.
Hey,
turn it down, my dear brother. Turn it down. Turn it down.
It is down.
All right, talk to me.
I want to congratulate you on your wonderful guest. I'll have to put it this way: if you're poor, you don't deserve a presumption of innocence. only billionaires deserve that. But what I really wanted to point out was, you're talking about the misrepresentation of some of these political commercials. There was another one I was watching. This guy says that, my son was murdered, and I sent a letter to County Judge Hidalgo, and to see, to see it. And he says, he did nothing about it. And I'm looking at that, I'm saying, what did you? You don't get it. What could she do? She has no what.
She is not a judicial judge.
That, David, I'm glad that you say that, because I want to say, we need to just change that name.
I think so too.
Because Lena Hidalgo is not a judge. She does not control the criminal courts. She has no jurisdiction on anything like that. And there are a lot of ads that are blaming her for the crime. That it's got to be horrible for her because in the end, she doesn't control that.
You know,
I know it's a.
Go ahead, David.
I know it's a district court that handles felony convictions.
Right.
District courts are state courts.
Right.
And those are the ones that dispose of felony crimes.
Exactly. Not a county judge who is really administrative only.
But the problem is this: Republicans know this, but they don't care because number one, they'll go stoop to any level to try to get their people elected. If they have to lie, so be it. The end justifies their end justifies their means, and furthermore, they do everything they can to indemnify themselves or exempt themselves from the consequences of their actions. They have a philosophy, and it goes something like this, especially with these Christian nationalists. I don't want to bring religion in, but this is a fact. They say, I'm not subject to man's law. I'm only subject to God's law.
Well, let me tell you something, David. I want to segue on, hold a second, but I want to point out something because it just hit me, something that Juanita mentioned earlier, where she said that bond companies are not even necessarily requiring that 10% requirement anymore. It drops to 5%. So what Juanita just told me is that the bond industry is a money making industry as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And by inference, what she's also saying is she could set a bond of $1 million, and all the bonds guy has to do is say, okay, I'm going to drop the requirements instead of 10% to 0.5%. Suddenly, you can afford to pay the bonds guy the money that he needs, and if he's in cahoots with the government that says he has unlimited credit, he doesn't even have to come up with the $1 million. The judge is just twisting her fingers because the collusion between the bond companies and the state. And I know you won't say that, Judge. I know you won't say that, but I can say that given who I am.
I do say follow the money. Let's just be honest. Let's follow the money. So part of what I talked about in my video, and if anybody wants to look at it on TikTok, it's under my name is the original sister-in-law is what my TikTok name is.
I remember you on that show.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the issue is follow the money. When our misdemeanor bond system was declared illegal, bonding companies that used to make a whole lot of money on these $150, $250 bonds no longer had them. So you had bonding companies that could write, $20 to $30, $300 bonds a day, and they lost that money. So when they started losing that money, they started loosening the requirements for the felony bonds for people because they needed to make up the cost difference. And so then let's attack. And the money behind all of this, a lot of it, is bonding companies, because in the end, they've lost this industry that makes their money off of crime. And I'm going to get in there and I'm going to put my foot in this. And Crime Stoppers is behind a lot of this as well. Crime Stoppers made their money, and they are grant funded on these donations and these things that they're not getting. Crime Stoppers' money and the amount from when we're no longer making these bonds and people are no longer, their amount has gone down. Because so they've teamed up. So they're teaming up and adding to this rhetoric about this fear of crime. I'm not telling you that crime did not go up in 2019 and 2020. It did. It went up in the entire country. We had people that couldn't work. We had people locked in. We had people weren't getting their mental health treatment. We had people that became addicted even more. We had a perfect storm. But it doesn't make it the fault of one particular group of judges that had just gotten on the bench.
And that is important to come out there, Juanita. The reason why and David, we have to get this message out right. First of all, the narrative is that somehow you put in a whole lot of Democratic judges and crime goes haywire. And, for too long, And again, a lot of the judges stayed all of the judges stayed quiet, as Juanita points out, because again, they simply have to be careful of what they say sitting on the bench. But people like Juanita, while running, she can speak about the issues. But here's the deal. Let's be frank. I played this. I wrote a blog about this last night. If you're really worried about crime, understand where crime have creeped up a bunch. As we violent crime, I'm talking about, as we unleashed guns onto the people.
Absolutely.
As we went ahead in when your Republican Congress, your Republican legislature said we could throw guns at anybody who wanted guns, people started popping caps into others because they were blocking their way. Crime went up because of the legislature, and who controlled that again? And let's show that it's not some sort of an accident. Okay, if you take a look at, hold on a second, David. I'll come to you in a second. But if you take a look at all the states controlled by Republicans right now. This is not conjecture. And for my good friends that are Republicans listening in right now, there is a 40% difference. In other words, the violent crime rate is 40% higher in states controlled by Republicans. There's no argument about it. You can look it up yourself. And for those who like to say, okay, it's higher in these states, but it is in blue cities. Oklahoma City, controlled by a Republican mayor. Tulsa, Oklahoma, controlled by a Republican mayor. The whole state of Oklahoma, controlled by a Republican governor. That state's crime rate, murder rate, is higher, twice as high as New York, and 50% higher than California. Those are just the numbers. I know a lot of people don't like to hear facts. That's fine. Let me just tell you, if you want to increase your probability of getting killed, move to a red state.
Right.
Continue.
I agree. The other issue that we need to address too is this crime, the increase in crime. If you do your research, the years that we in Houston had higher crime, we've had higher crime in Houston than now. We had higher crime
in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Yes.
In 2006, 2007, after Hurricane Katrina, which we all know, all Republican judges. We were a Republican city. We were a Republican state. We even had higher crime in 2014. So if you do your research of when we had our worst crime times, they were all when we had Republican judges and Republican-controlled legislature.
And there is actually there is an actual and this is not by accident. David, do you have something quick to say before I let you go?
Yeah, I just want to bring up one more thing, and I'm not sure you might have heard about this. It's not a local. This thing happened at January the 6th, the insurrection, and I heard the. Now this goes right back to the issue of standing.
Yes.
I think it was Steve Scalise, the Congress critter from Louisiana, blamed Nancy Pelosi for preventing the National Guard to appear at the Capitol during the riot. Well, I heard it from these two Republican women I know. I'm acquainted with. They said that same thing, and I told them that Nancy Pelosi has no authority to control the National Guard. That's a
David,
function of state.
Thank you. I'm going to address that as soon as I get you off the line. I appreciate your call, my brother. You keep on calling, keep on listening. And folks, all of you that are listening, remember to tell everybody we are on live again. So give folks, let everybody know that KPFT is back on live. We have a new studio. We're building it up still, but we're on live. Look, let's be clear here, folks. And this is extremely important. Juanita just said when this county was under Republican control, that crime was higher and a lot of other things were higher. And there is a reason for that. And that is, if you don't believe in government, if you think government is bad, if you think all these things about government, how can you be good at it? You're already saying it's bad. How can you be good at it? You know what? There's some people who believe in government. I had the county clerk in this studio last week. Mm-hmm. This county clerk told you all these great things that she did to make this county works better. We have Juanita Jackson in the house. Juanita is talking about how much better we want to make those courts work.
Well, not just how much better we want to, how much better they are working.
And they're working.
We have the best court clearance. When we say case clearance rate, meaning cases are getting resolved.
Right.
28% higher than they were and more than prior to 2018. Mm-hmm. That means that it's working faster. Right. That cases are getting through the system. Used to be, you've heard these horror stories of someone sitting in jail 2, 3 years, 5 years. I remember. I remember how bad it was. I just telling you as a practitioner,
right? You
24 years
served by the court,
and I can sit there and tell you that we no longer have mentally ill people sitting in jail languishing. We no longer have people that have drug issues. They're getting the help that they need, and they are saving. I think the new bail reform. I think the numbers are that they have saved Harris County $33 million by getting people help versus sitting them in jail.
Right.
Okay. And ultimately, it's made our recidivism rate for misdemeanors decrease dramatically as well. So I'm not sitting there, and this is about my fourth time saying it, we don't have a crime issue. Every major city in this country has a crime issue.
Let me just correlate to that. Every area, last night I was looking at some data.
Even rural areas.
Rural areas are up in crime at the peak 25%. Urban areas 30%. So that's pretty damn close.
Right.
Pretty damn close. But anyway, folks, we're getting close to the end. We only have about 3 more minutes or so to go. I want to tell you guys, if you have judges right now campaigning to hold a spot, and if they are lying to you right now, and Politics Done Right is telling you categorically right now that every judge that has an ad on TV right now that is blaming judges for the crime issues, they are lying to you. And if a judge begins to lie before they are on the bench, you can only expect them to do the same when they are sitting on the bench. We got to get out of here. So I want to give Juanita Jackson, who is running for a district for the Harris County Court number 10. Thank you so kindly for enlightening us. I have learned a lot in speaking to you, and I'm so glad I saw your TikTok that actually tried to explain this. So your final words, about 15 seconds.
My final words is do your research. We can no longer just rely on what the media tells us, because the bottom line is they subscribe to a whole new school now. You know, I talk about that you repeat the lie long enough,
it's believed.
It's believed. And that is what is happening. And that is what is scaring our citizens. Get the truth. Google, do your own research. That's all I've got to say is do the research, and you'll see that we are doing the best.
Juanita Jackson, thank you so kindly for having been here on Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know I hand this baby. I am what? Out! We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.